In the suffocating silence of the concrete tunnel, shadows stretch and mingle in the dimness, broken only by the faint, silvery shimmer of rainwater trickling from cracks overhead. The air hangs heavy, saturated with the scent of damp stone and old secrets. Amidst the gloom, a figure remains utterly motionless, a woman named Drasa, her body pressed into the cold wall, every muscle tensed in patient anticipation. The muzzle of her sniper rifle protrudes from the darkness, like the tongue of some waiting predator, its matte surface drinking in the meager dusk light. Her breathing is low, almost imperceptible. The only sign of life, a slow, measured exhale that fogs the edge of her scope. Each inhale is deliberate, in tune with the low, ambient hum that seems to emanate from the tunnel itself, a resonance of distant machinery and the rhythm of the world above. A bead of water traces a path down her cheek, ignored as she fixes her gaze forward, eyes narrowed and unblinking. The world narrows to a thin slit of focus. Her vision sharpens, her heartbeat pounding in her ears, a steady, primal drum that marks time with each drawn breath. Beyond the tunnel's mouth, the landscape opens in a wide, fog-shrouded expanse. Dawn struggles to break through the mist, painting the world in pale, ghostly blues. A solitary runway emerges from the haze, slick with the remnants of night's rain. From above, the scene is a study in isolation. An airport nearly abandoned, save for the tiny silhouette of a plane rolling to a halt. Its engines whine softly, then fade into the hush of early morning as it comes to rest at the edge of the tarmac. Inside her tunnel, Drasa shifts almost imperceptibly, her gloved finger brushing the trigger. She raises her rifle, the scope's glass reflecting a sliver of the waking world. Through that narrow lens, Dashi's, everything else falls away. The fog, the runway, the distant echoes of a city not yet awake. All that remains is the target, a suited government officer, briefcase in hand, descending the metal stairs with the stiff, practiced gait of someone accustomed to being watched. His head turns briefly, a flicker of suspicion or simple habit, but there is no alarm. The only sound is the soft, crackling radio chatter from nearby guards, tones low and routine. In that suspended moment, Drasa's world tightens to a single point, a convergence of skill, patience, and calculation. Her finger settles, the rifle steadied against her shoulder, breath held in perfect stillness. Then, without warning or flourish, the shot rings out, a sharp, controlled exhalation of violence that pierces the quiet. The officer stumbles, collapses, his body folding with an eerie grace onto the rain-slicked runway. There is no chaos, no panicked shouts, only confusion. Guards frozen in disbelief, eyes scanning the fog for a threat they cannot see. Back in the tunnel, Drasa does not linger in the thrill of success. She moves with methodical calm, sliding the rifle back and wiping the lens with a practiced flick. Her hands are steady, betraying no hint of triumph or regret, only the quiet discipline of one who has done this before. The wind stirs through the tunnel's mouth, carrying with it the faint, metallic tang of gunpowder and the distant, muffled voices of men scrambling to understand what has just occurred. In the aftermath, Drasa crouches where she fired, her focus shifting to the ritual that follows every shot. She retrieves the spent bullet casing, its surface still warm from the violence it delivered. With gentle care, she cleans away the residue, turning it over in her palm until it gleams faintly in the gloom. There is a reverence to her movements, a silent acknowledgement of the weight that each action carries. She slides the casing into a small velvet pouch, the fabric worn smooth by years of repetition. The ritual is intimate, a private act shrouded in soft, melancholic piano notes that seem to echo from some memory long past. The focus drifts from the casing to her face, eyes haunted, jaw set, before she slips the pouch into her coat, the gesture final and deliberate. The city breathes and moves on, oblivious to the silent hand that shaped its morning. Drasa leaves the tunnel behind, shadow merging with shadow as she disappears into the waking world. Later, as the day wanes, she walks alone through the hush of an old cemetery, the world painted in the golden hues of sunset. The grass is long and wild, the stones weathered by years of wind and rain. She pauses before a grave whose inscription has been softened by time, the name barely legible beneath the moss. Kneeling, she draws the velvet pouch from her coat and places it gently on the headstone, her fingers lingering in farewell. In the hush, she whispers words only the dead can hear, a promise, perhaps, or an apology. The air is thick with the scent of earth and memory, the distant toll of a church bell drifting on the breeze. There is no one to see her here, no audience for her grief or her rituals. The cemetery is nearly empty, save for the birds flitting through the branches and the sun dipping low behind the trees. Drasa bows her head, the weight of the day settling on her shoulders. She rests her hand on the stone, feeling the roughness beneath her palm, the cool solidity that anchors her to something real. For a moment, the world stands still. A solitary figure knelt in remembrance, the velvet pouch a silent offering. The wind stirs, carrying away her whispered words, and the shadows lengthen across the graves. Drasa rises, her silhouette outlined against the fading light, and turns to walk away, leaving the pouch and its memory behind. As she disappears into the gathering dusk, the final echoes of the church bell fade, and the cemetery returns to silence, a place of endings and of things left unsaid. The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor and the faint hum of machinery. Sunlight pressed through the blinds in pale stripes, illuminating the frail figure of Drasa's father lying propped against a cluster of white pillows. His hand, lined with age and marked by a lifetime of labor, trembled as it reached for hers. The skin was thin, almost translucent, veins tracing rivers beneath the surface. Drasa's fingers closed gently around his, her heart heavy with the unspoken knowledge of what was coming. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and the weight of impending farewell. He looked at her, eyes still bright with the spark of wisdom, but rimmed with exhaustion. His voice emerged, thin but deliberate, each word carefully chosen, as if etched into the air itself. "My time is short, Drasa," he whispered, his breath shallow. "They tell me I won't see February's end. Valentine's Day, they say. I want you to remember. You are stronger than you believe. Promise me, when I am gone, you will let the world see your light. Don't let the darkness take you. Live, Drasa. Live for both of us." There was a long pause as the machine's beep slowed, matching the tempo of his breaths. Tears welled in Drasa's eyes, blurring the lines of the room, the world shrinking to the space between their entwined hands. As the beeping slowed further, she pressed her forehead to his knuckles, vowing in silence to carry his words forward. The final moments were filled with the gentle swell of emotion. The string of her heart pulled taut as the monitor's rhythm faded, leaving only the memory of his voice echoing. A lasting beacon in the gathering dark. Night descended with a cool, restless hush. Levi's dreams splintered into jagged fragments, shadows chasing him through corridors of memory, distant voices calling from beyond the reach of comprehension. He jerked awake, breath ragged, skin damp with sweat. The room was suffocating, the walls closing in with the echo of his own heartbeat. Without thinking, he stumbled from his bed, feet carrying him through the silent house and out into the night air. The world outside was painted in silver and blue, the moon suspended above a restless sea. He made his way to the shoreline, the sand cold and wet beneath his bare feet, grounding him in the present. Levi sank to his knees at the water's edge, the tide whispering secrets to the land. From his jacket pocket, he pulled a battered diary, its cover scarred by time and use. Hands trembling, he flipped it open, the pages curled and soft from countless readings. The tip of his pen hovered above the paper, uncertainty weighing heavy. He began to write, the words pouring out in uneven lines, fragments of dreams, confessions he could never speak aloud, the ache of absence and the terror of what awaited him. Each stroke of the pen was a balm, a small measure of control. The waves provided a gentle rhythm, a counterpoint to the lonely synth of his thoughts. The night offering no answers, only the comfort of solitude and the soft, persistent hope that morning would bring clarity. The next day dawned with an edge of urgency. Levi's phone buzzed, vibrating against the wooden table with a mechanical insistence. On the screen, a message appeared. Encrypted. lines of code resolving into a set of coordinates and a brief command. Report immediately. No sender, no explanation, just the coordinates, pulsing with quiet menace. Levi's heart pounded as he gathered his things, the diary tucked away as both shield and burden. A flurry of movement followed, boots on gravel, the hiss of bus brakes in the pre-dawn gloom, the hurried exchange of identification at a checkpoint. The military base loomed ahead, its edges blurred by mist and secrecy. Inside, the world shifted, corridors lined with steel, the air thick with tension and purpose. Levi was ushered through narrow halls, every turn shadowed by the unknown, until he reached a heavy door. It opened with a hiss, revealing a dimly lit briefing room. Harsh fluorescent lights cast long shadows across metal tables. At the far end stood Barto, a commanding presence, her posture exuding authority, eyes sharp and unwavering. She gestured for Levi to sit, her voice measured and deliberate. "We have an assignment, high risk, 1-year deployment, full discretion." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Levi felt the weight of them settle on his shoulders, pressing down with the memory of every choice that led him here. Barto's gaze narrowed, her tone softening just a fraction. "Do you have anyone? Anyone waiting for you?" The question sliced through the tension, exposing the rawness beneath Levi's practiced composure. He hesitated, the silence stretching out, words caught in the space between obligation and longing. In that moment, every memory of connection, every hand held, every promise made, rose and fell like the tide. He finally shook his head, the motion barely perceptible, but it was enough. The mission was set. The roar of the aircraft was deafening, vibrating through the metal skin of the fuselage. Levi sat among rows of gear and nervous faces, oxygen masks pressed to mouths, breath fogging in the cold interior. The world outside was hidden behind thick glass, but the anticipation was palpable, a living thing coiled in the belly of the plane. The ramp lowered, letting in a rush of blinding white light, the horizon stretching impossibly far. Levi stood, heart hammering, hands steady despite the surge of adrenaline. He stepped forward, weightless for a split second as he leapt into the void. The world exploded into motion, wind tearing past, the ground a distant promise. The silence was immense, broken only by the faint hiss of the radio and the whisper of wind in his ears. For a moment, Levi was suspended between earth and sky, the mission ahead a blank page. Below, the barren landscape sprawled out, waiting to be written upon. He closed his eyes, the words of the past echoing through him, and prepared to meet what came next. The sun hangs low and relentless, turning the horizon into a trembling band of molten gold and rust-red haze. Levi moves alone across an endless plain, his boots kicking up clouds of dust with every step. The land stretches in all directions, flat and unforgiving, offering no promise of shade or comfort. A battered rucksack weighs on his back, the straps digging into sunburned shoulders. But Levi presses on, his breath steady, his eyes fixed on the wavering line where earth meets sky. Every so often, he checks a faded map, 32 kilometers left to go, a distance that feels both precise and immeasurable when set against the emptiness before him. The wind carries only the sound of his own footsteps, and sometimes the fragile twang of a guitar echoes in his mind, a private soundtrack to the rhythm of his journey. The music is simple, lonely, a single thread carried across the vast silence. Shadows drift and lengthen as the day slips away, and Levi's thoughts wander with them, back to memories of home, then forward to the uncertainty waiting at journey's end. Each step is a vow not to look back, not to falter, no matter how far the road or how wide the plain. As dusk settles in, the landscape rises abruptly to reveal a wooden watchtower, its silhouette cut sharp against the bleeding sky. Levi approaches, wary but determined, and is greeted by JD, a figure whose presence carries the rough comfort of a veteran. JD's handshake is firm, his eyes tired but alert. Together, they ascend the creaking ladder, and JD begins the handoff, pointing out the sightlines, the blind spots, the battered old radios that might or might not work when needed most. JD leans over the railing, indicating a gash in the ground nearby, a jagged ditch known as Holloman. "Never get too close," JD warns, his voice flat with experience. To demonstrate, he pulls a grenade from his belt and, with a practiced flick of the wrist, tosses it into the pit. For a moment, there's only the distant clang as metal meets stone. Then a scream rises from the darkness below. It is inhuman, echoing, a sound that chills the blood and settles over the plain like a curse. Levi stares down, the scale of the pit and the tower suddenly apparent. The world above and the world below, separated by nothing but splintered wood and the shivering air. Night falls. The torch is passed. JD's farewell is brief, practical. He vanishes into the gathering dark, leaving Levi alone atop the tower, the weight of duty settling in as the stars emerge one by one. The days blur into ritual. Levi moves through the cramped space, checking the heavy machine guns mounted at the corners, their barrels dark and cold in the morning light. He reloads the automatic turrets, each metallic click echoing in the hollow silence. On the walls, he finds notes carved deep into the wood. Names, dates, warnings, memories of those who came before him. He traces the lines with a finger, piecing together fragments of other lives, other long watches. A battered clock ticks relentlessly, counting the hours, the days, marking time in a place where nothing and everything changes. Loneliness wraps itself around Levi like a second skin. He paces the floor, reads old scraps of paper, sketches maps and plans. From the tower's high perch, he watches the world below for any sign of movement, any hint of threat. The wind whistles through the beams, carrying with it the distant echoes of that scream from Holloman's pit. At night, the silence grows deeper, thick, almost physical. Levi learns to live with it, to breathe it in and let it out again. One day, through the battered lens of a telescope, something shifts. On the far side of the plain, another tower rises, its form familiar, yet always distant. Levi scans its silhouette and sees movement. A figure climbing, silhouetted against the pale sky. As the shape comes into focus, he catches a glimpse of a face, sharp, determined, framed by loose hair that moves with the wind. Drasa. The name arrives as if remembered, not learned. She moves with unhurried ease, her posture sure, her gaze fierce. Levi lowers the telescope, his heart beating just a little faster. The days that follow are charged with new energy. From his tower, Levi watches Drasa move through her own rituals, a mirror image of his own isolation. At night, when the world is quietest, he dares to light a small lantern, its glow barely visible from across the distance. Sometimes, a second light flickers in response, a silent acknowledgement, a thin thread binding two strangers together. One night, Levi sees her step out onto the platform, a small music player in her hand. She presses play, and the faintest strains of an old melody drift through the air, barely audible but unmistakably human. Drasa begins to dance, her movements fluid and graceful, spinning alone in the moonlight. Levi watches, transfixed, a shy smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. On some nights, he matches her steps in secret, his own feet shuffling quietly on the worn boards. The distance between the towers shrinks and grows, measured in the language of glances and gestures. In the deep hours, when the world is all shadow and possibility, Levi and Drasa meet each other's eyes across the void. Time slows, the ticking clock forgotten for a moment, replaced by the soft warmth of shared light, and the unspoken hope that even in a place built for watchfulness and war, something gentle can take root. And so, each day begins and ends the same. Alone, but not wholly so. The boundaries of their world remain strict, the rules engraved as deeply as the names on the tower walls. Yet in the quiet spaces between, Levi finds solace in the silent dance, the flickering lights, and the knowledge that, somewhere not so far away, another soul waits and watches, just as he does. In the pale blue haze of early morning, a sense of quiet camaraderie fills the air. Two figures stand side by side, their features sharp against the muted light. Levi and Drasa equals not just in duty, but in skill. The ground beneath them, scarred by conflict, offers a brief moment of peace. Drasa, with a glint of challenge in her eyes, sets a small glass bottle atop a battered crate. The world seems to hold its breath as Levi raises his rifle with practiced ease. Time slows, every detail in crisp relief, the steadying of breath, the tightening of a finger against the trigger. A single shot rings out, echoing in the stillness. The bottle shatters into 1,000 glimmering fragments, each piece catching the dawn light for a heartbeat before falling away. Without missing a beat, Drasa steps forward, her own weapon at the ready. Levi returns the favor, setting up another target, his eyes never leaving hers. Drasa's gaze sharpens, focus absolute. She inhales, exhales, and fires. The sound is sharp, decisive. The bottle explodes in a shower of glass, matching Levi's earlier perfection. Quick, rhythmic exchanges of skill, close-ups on hands, eyes, the subtle flicker of a smile. The contest is friendly, but beneath the laughter and jibes, mutual respect burns bright. Suddenly, the tranquility fractures. The first alarm blares through the bass, a guttural metallic sound that slices through the morning. Levi and Drasa freeze for a split second, exchanging a look that speaks volumes. Then, in perfect unison, they move. From the edge of the outpost, a horrifying sight unfolds. Thousands of hollow, fast-moving creatures swarm the lower slopes, their bodies a blur of sinew and hunger. The ground quakes beneath the onslaught, the sheer number overwhelming. Levi and Drasa take their positions atop the battered towers, rifles pressed to shoulders. Their eyes scan the tide of creatures advancing, calculating, anticipating. Each shot is deliberate, synchronized, a dance of survival. Levi picks off the lead creatures, while Drasa targets clusters, her aim precise. The soundtrack is frantic, rifle fire, pounding percussion, the distant shrieks of the horde. Explosive landmines detonate in rapid succession, geysers of earth and gore erupting as the creatures stumble into traps. The air is thick with the acrid stench of gunpowder and fear. Through it all, the two sharpshooters move with the grace of seasoned veterans, covering each other's blind spots, never wavering. But the enemy is relentless. In the chaos, Levi spots a gap in the lines, a narrow rope bridge, fraying and unstable, spanning a deep trench between towers. On the far side, Drasa is pinned down by the surging horde. Without hesitation, Levi slings his rifle and grabs the rope, hand over hand, inching across the abyss. The wind howls, carrying with it the distant, desperate cries of the survivors. For a moment, all that exists is the rope, the void below, and the promise of rescue. Then, disaster strikes. A landmine, hidden beneath the shifting soil, detonates with a deafening roar. The blast severs the rope in a single, jarring instant. Time dilates. Levi's body arcs through the air, slow-motion agony written across his face. Below, the trench gapes wide, a maw hungry for the fallen. Drasa's scream is lost to the wind, her world narrowing to a single imperative: save him. She leaps forward, a parachute clutched in determined hands, launching herself into the void. The wind roars, tearing at her clothes, her hair, every muscle straining against gravity. For a heartbeat, they are both suspended, untethered, the world reduced to the space between them and the endless fall. Darkness closes in, and when it lifts, Levi and Drasa find themselves in the bowels of the earth, a labyrinthine expanse of abandoned tunnels and forgotten secrets. The air is thick with dust and the weight of years. They move cautiously, flashlights flickering over ruined equipment and shattered glass. In one shadowed corner, an ancient DVD glints beneath a layer of grime. Drasa picks it up, her hands trembling. They find an old player, its surface coated in the residue of neglect. With a sputter of static and a whir of ancient machinery, the screen flares to life. A scientist appears, her face drawn and haunted, voice trembling as she recounts the final days of the lab. She speaks of a chemical missile, its payload ruptured in a failed containment effort. The leak, she confides, was immediate and catastrophic. Every living thing in the valley infected within hours. The footage is grainy, warped by time. The scientist's words are punctuated by bursts of static and flickering images of chaos. Levi and Drasa watch, faces illuminated by the cold glow, horror etched into every line. The message ends abruptly, the screen dissolving into white noise, the unanswered questions hanging in the air like poison. Driven by a mixture of dread and determination, the duo emerges from the underground into a world transformed. They walk through a forest that should not exist, trees towering high, their roots entwined with bones and decomposing flesh. Strange flowers bloom from the ribcages of the fallen, petals slick with unnatural color. The ground is soft with rot, every step releasing a sickly sweet fragrance that clings to the back of the throat. Levi pauses, kneeling beside a half-buried skeleton. He brushes away dirt to reveal a faded uniform, the insignia unmistakable, 1940. Soldiers who vanished without a trace, now part of the unnatural cycle. Drasa stands beside him, her breath shallow, eyes wide. They look up, and the world expands. A sweeping view of the valley, endless and infected, a landscape of death and transformation. Above, the sky is heavy, bruised with the threat of storm. The realization settles in, cold and unyielding. This was never just an accident. It was an epidemic, uncontained, unacknowledged, its legacy seeping into every corner of the land. As the wind picks up, carrying with it the echoes of the lost, Levi's voice is barely a whisper, but it cuts through the silence with chilling clarity. It was never contained. The words hang in the air, a promise and a warning, as the darkness closes in once more.